Bandow, political writer and former special assistant to President Ronald Reagan, is joining us live. Welcome. Thank you very much for speaking with us on Newsx. Bandow, what do you make of, many who now are critiquing the US and the US's hypocrisy, showing a mirror to what actually transpired when the US invaded Iraq for WMDs, something which didn't turn out to be very accurate later?
Well, that was a very poor episode for the United States. And it's no surprise that other countries would look back at that when they see the Trump administration, because President Trump has taken the idea of bullying and coercion on the international stage to a new level and done it not only against the countries that he views as adversaries, but doing it against countries that long have been viewed as friends and allies, which is quite a change from most administrations.
Yes, indeed. Also, Bandow, do you believe this, the tariff threats and, of course, also the pressure tactics that the US these days is exerting will be leading to new friendships, new relations emerging across the world?
I think over the long term, they're very likely to backfire. We've seen that with the elections in Canada and Australia, which delivered governments that would be less friendly towards the Trump administration. I think we see that with your own government that responded by coming up with a kind of a closer relationship, perhaps, with both China and Russia. I think we are going to see that elsewhere, that countries are going to look to support one another. Even some talk of Europe wanting to work on trade issues with other countries, including China. These won't all be easy to do, given other interests and differences among the countries. Nevertheless, I think we see a lot of countries looking towards finding support elsewhere to balance against the United States when it starts behaving this way.
Also, Mr. Bandow, let me ask you about the US-India relationship. Where do you see ties between the two countries headed now in the near future? And are you a bit disappointed at how the US has treated a steadfast ally and friend with the stance that it's taken?
Oh, I think it's a great mistake. In my view, number one, the tariffs are bad economic policy. I think they will hurt the United States as well as the countries they are being applied on. And in my view, over the long term, a better US-India relationship is beneficial for both countries. And to build that better relationship, there has to be a respect for one another. The US certainly is going to have some differences with the Indian government and the Indian government with the US government. But applying economic warfare, especially when it's pure hypocrisy, because of course it is supposedly in response to Indian purchases of Russian oil, but China purchases Russian oil, Turkey purchases Russian oil, Brazil and other countries purchase Russian oil, yet the president has not applied extra tariffs to them. So this policy makes no sense, in my view, in terms of what it's stated to do.
Okay.
And it's clearly undercutting the relationship between the US and India, which, as I indicated, I think is a problem on both sides.
Let me ask you then about what will be needed to reset, US and India ties going forward.
Well, it's certainly going to require, number one, I think, pulling off the oil-oriented tariffs, that is the 25% imposed as a penalty. It also requires an agreement on trade between the two countries. I think that is certainly possible, that it's in both countries' interest to have a good trading relationship. And it's going to require the US government to treat New Delhi, I think, with a bit more respect, that to be loading up with sanctions and to be denouncing the Modi government is not helpful for the relationship. And Trump is going to have to change his tone if he wants to have a better relationship with Prime Minister Modi and his government.
Do you believe it's also pretty unfair to try and blame India for the Russia-Ukraine war? And also, it's a bit of double speak when you don't have stringent sanctions against the biggest buyer of Russian oil, that is China.
Oh, absolutely. As I indicated, it's not just China. It's Turkey and other countries which buy the oil, and there are no sanctions on them. I mean, the issue of Ukraine-Russia war is a very difficult one, but countries in Europe, Hungary and Slovakia, still buy Russian oil, and the U.S. buys uranium and some other products from Russia. So the notion that anyone dealing with Russia is to blame for the war is, number one, hypocritical, and number two, misplaced.
Okay.
It's a tragedy, but to impose those costs on other countries outside at America's whim is no answer.
All right, Joe Bandow, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on that big story. Let me also